Hello and good afternoon friends, welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, since our previous two sessions we would have been talking on natural language processing. We have tried to understand various aspects under the topic natural language processing. Today we would be discussing on machine translation, and for this very discussion we have once again with us in our studios we have Dr. D.K. Lobial. Dr. D.K. Lobial is in the department, I would say, School of Computer and System Sciences, JNU. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. D.K. Lobial, and let's try to understand more and more about machine translation. Hello sir, welcome to the EduSet lecture.
Thank you, Geetika ji. Now today's topic is machine translation, which is one of the applications of natural language processing. In past few lectures we talked a lot of things about natural language processing, and towards the end we had been discussing about what are the various applications of natural language processing. And there are various applications of natural language processing. It is machine translation is one of the applications of natural language processing, and there are other applications, as you said, information retrieval, question answering systems, and so on and so forth. There are multiple applications of natural language processing. Machine translation being one of the primary aim or most important applications of NLP. That is why today's lecture will be on MT, that is machine translation. Now, why this has become important is one of the important aspect is the Second World War, 1945 onwards, 39-45. That has given rise to a lot of issues in computer science. If you look at the cryptography and the signal processing, everything has come from there. So is the machine translation, has its initiation from Second World War. The reason is when the pilots from different language speaking countries were trying to attack the other countries, and while they communicating with their base systems, it was very difficult to decipher the message the pilot and its mother country is talking about. For the enemy country it was difficult to even after intercepting the messages, it was difficult to understand the language. That is what the genesis came, why machine translation is important. And that too is later on, after a few years, while in the normal air services, when the pilot, say for example France, landing his flight in US, maybe he will only knows the language French and may not be able to understand English. Then the ground staff may not be able to communicate with the French, maybe German, and so on and so forth. That also put a difficulty. Therefore, one of the first small system, WSP was developed for such kind of applications of machine translation. That means the translation between languages is very, very important. If you look at Indian scenario, what I am saying is 1985, with the new Ministry of Information Technology, India started information technology. Now today where we are, that you know that there are a lot of applications huge, but this has revolutionized the whole world, even India, as far as information technology is concerned. That is where we call that you have information and then you have communication technology. That means you have a lot of information has to be transmitted or used through communication technology. That is what IT was defined when it came. But if you look at Indian context, why I am making this plot is, the reason is majority of the Indian population may not be able to speak or understand English. Now therefore, to have a real revolution in IT, the countries like India will definitely require to have information technology, which is information plus communication technology. I will add that plus language technology. So if the language part of it will really make it successful, because that everybody understands what is being transmitted in his her own language if translation is possible. Now that is why the why language translation is important and why language is important. If you look at a large amount of information in web today is available in a small subset of languages, that is maybe largely in English, maybe in few other languages. That is why I said a large amount of information is available in a small set of languages. Now, how many people in the world understand English? Now, probably with globalization, people may be moving towards learning language, English language, that may come up, but currently that is not the situation. So, therefore, the information which is available on the web, on internet, is available only to a small portion of the society. That is where the difficulty is. That means, even if you have huge amount of information available or resources of information available, but the accessibility because of the language is limited. Accessibility because of the technology is not limited enough, but the language becomes a barrier to use this information. Therefore, that is what I said, and this also is creating a digital divide. That means, those who can access information in the language it is provided, which is a small portion, and there is a large portion which is not able to access this information. So, therefore, there is a digital divide. A small portion is only aware of the information, a large portion still is unaware of the information. Therefore, there is a clear divide. This clear divide is in terms of the digital technology, but it is caused by the language barrier. Now, if you go on certain facts that only 3% of the population in multilingual countries like India understand English. That is where the difficulty is. That means, the majority of the population is not understanding English or forget about speaking. If the understanding is a small percentage, then speakers will even be a small percentage of the language. Therefore, the translation becomes an important tool. So, large portion of the Indian population needs translation of the available information on the web in their own languages, so they can access it. And that is what the reason is the significance of machine translation system in Indian context is more relevant and more important. So, if you have machine translation systems, then you can unite word intellectually. That is one of the what you can say distance and larger goal of MT systems. Now, then if you look at the larger number of languages in the world, around 600 to 800 living languages around the world, there may be many more. And with written tradition, the number is only small, that is 600. That means 95% of world population speaks only 100 languages. That means larger number of languages are spoken by a small section of the population. Then, and only few languages is spoken by a small number of people, large number of people. Now, and if you look at, therefore, the market for machine translation becomes important and has more role to play, and in terms of business as well, not only in terms of the requirement of the society, but it will grow the business. Now, if you look at that, in 2010 it was expected to be 26 billion, which will be around much more than that, but it says it exceeds or increases doubles every 5 years. Now, the expected by US dollar 2020 in terms of the US dollar, what you said is it is $982.3 billion in terms of only rule based and statistical machine translation. I am not saying this is for complete machine translation, this is only for few aspects of the machine translation. Now, therefore, machine translation facilitates translation of text from one language to another language. That is what the aim is. And as I said in the beginning, it is one of the earliest applications of natural language processing, and it may also help in overcoming the technological barriers. A large population even today will not like or will hesitate to learn technology, because most of the things to learn technology or the learning of the technology involves a particular language, say English. If it is not available in their language, they will be technologically challenged. So, to make them technologically not challenged or technologically enabled, then they must learn, or they must have some facility where they can get information in their own language through machine translation. Now, there are certain issues of machine translation which are very important, which probably I might have discussed in my previous lectures when we talked about NLP. Now, as far as translation is concerned, the word order, the order of a word in a sentence of a language is very crucial, or plays a very vital role, because as I said, I repeat it again, it's a SVO is one order in one language and SOV is in Hindi, SVO is in English. That means the order of subject verb object is in one language is different than the other language. Now, while the machine translation issue comes, one must know that while you are translating, it is not only translation of the meaning of the words, but the order in which they have to be placed in the target language is equally important. Then the word sense disambiguation, because one of the word may have multiple senses, and then therefore how to get the correct sense. If those Hindi speakers, one of the beautiful example of this is like you say jotna, which is to plow a field and to plow. Now, if you look at this jotna, what happens is, this is a very standard example which is given in the Paninian grammar written by, or the book on NLP through Paninian grammar is written by Professor Sangal and Chaitanya. That is where it said that this jotna, if you look at this, has multiple meanings. That when you take your oxes to the field, probably you are plowing a field. When you are say that मैंने राम ने मोहन को काम पर जोता, that is not plowing, basically engaged in doing certain work. So, the sense of jotna in one sense is you are engaging somebody to do some work, in other sense you are using the bulls to plow the field. This is true, there may be multiple as well. Like say for example, the rise, we said the sun rises in the east and Ram rises early in the morning. If you look at that, this rise has two different senses, one is the getting up and one is the coming up. That is what I am saying is, a word may have multiple senses. So, in translation to get a right sense is important. Therefore, a word sense disambiguation, where there is an ambiguity between sense of the word, that means which of the sense out of multiple senses has to be chosen to get the right interpretation, then it introduces ambiguity. Now, how to resolve this ambiguity? That is again a big area of research, but right now that is one of the challenging issue for machine translation. The third issue is pronoun resolution. I put only few key issues, there may be multiple, where how do you identify which noun is in fact replaced by the pronoun. That means the pronoun is occurring and it is occurring in place of which noun, because pronoun is a word which will come in place of some nouns. So, identifying the actual place of a pronoun or the actual noun in place of which a pronoun is being used, which we call referencing or referentiality, is very, very important in machine translation, because this replacement will not only change the position, the word order at times from language to language, probably it may also change the meaning. Like say for example, if you take English, I say what do you eat? I said that means I said I eat mango or I eat banana. That means what is being replaced by banana, but the position of banana has changed from what is in the beginning, banana is at the end. Though banana is coming in place of what, that is a WH question, but in Hindi it does not happen. It is आपने क्या खाया, मैंने आम खाया. The खाना क्या is replaced by the mango. Now here there is no movement of the place. The kya, that is the what, is being replaced in that place itself by the right object, say mango or banana. But English, it is replaced, but the position is also changing. So if you look at that, the resolution becomes important in terms of the getting the right meaning, in terms of putting it at the right place to get the right meaning. So therefore, overall ambiguity resolution is the very important aspect. It is not only resolving the ambiguity occurring due to pronouns, and there are other ambiguities which we talked a lot about, is the lexical ambiguity, the syntactic ambiguity, the semantic ambiguity. All ambiguities become important for machine translation, though they may not be that important as far as small applications of NLP may be concerned. If I am changing a query, the ambiguity may not be playing that big a role, but when you are translating a big document, probably the ambiguity will be more. Therefore, resolving the ambiguity becomes more important. And when you are talking about this, one of the very key issues is the idioms and metaphors we use in a language. So now even translating small simple sentences or document consisting of small sentences itself is a challenge. Then what to talk about the idioms and metaphors are most difficult. Even this is almost untouched area, though a small portion of researchers may be doing some work or doing some work, but largely it is untouched because the idioms and metaphors give something other meaning, probably or mostly or generally, and exactly I will call that the meaning of the words, if you combine together, it is not going to give the meaning of the phrase or the sentence which is representing the idiom or a metaphor. The idiom and metaphor will have something else other meaning. As example, hitting below the belt does not mean that you hit below the belt. That is not the exact what you call, if you take the translation of hitting, translation of belt below, it will not give you the right translation of the phrase hitting below the belt. So now touching upon idioms and metaphors is a distant question of dealing in machine translation. If you deal with word order, word sense, disambiguation, pronoun resolution and other kind of ambiguities could be good enough to handle the issues of machine translation. Now, there are various kinds of machine translation systems and how we can make them possible. If you look at this, we can have a full translation system. That means you give a full document, it will be translated in the target language document. If I feed a full document in English, that can be translated in Hindi or some other Indian languages. But if you look at the same time, but the full translation system are possible only in cases when you make translation systems only for a specific domain. It may not be possible still to have a machine translation system which is very generalized one. You give any kind of documents in language A that the machine translation system will be able to translate in the language B. Making such generalized systems still is not possible, because the huge amount of language resources are required and the huge amount of language to be stored, the knowledge to be stored, and the very good machine translation system is required, because the techniques developed so far are not that appropriate. Now, domain specific, the moment I say is possible, say for example, you can have a translation system, full translation system for translation of weather reports from language English to probably language Hindi, because it is domain specific. That means you have to store knowledge only about weather, not beyond that. So, storing or reserving the knowledge about a specific domain is much easier than storing knowledge or obtaining knowledge about the entire world. Is not possible. So, therefore, that is a full translation system is possible only when you have a domain specific translation system. The other kind of translation system is a machine aided translation. That means I do not have a full translation system, but I said the translation may not be the accurate translations. That means, what we will do is have a translation, this may not give an exact translation, but most of the time whatever translation comes, I may edit it and may improve it. Look at today, if you open a Google, sometimes you give a sentence to translate it. The Google translation at times does not give you very good results, because it is not a full translation system, and then only to a certain extent machine is able to, or the Google is able to translate a given sentence in English or Hindi to another language to a limited extent, but the errors occurring in that translation can be edited by experts later on. That means, it is only aiding or giving a help to a translator who otherwise has to translate the entire document. At least he has in hand certain kind of translation, after which he or she can post edit it. By post editing, we can have a machine aided translation. Then we have cross lingual NLP applications. That means, if you look at information retrieval systems, if I cannot have a full information retrieval systems, then I can have retrieval system cross language. That means, information is retrieved in one language and delivered to the user in other language. So, a small cross language system, translation system, which only will translate a query or a response from the IR or a query given to the IR. So, that is what we say cross language IR, because you may have a specific kind of information retrieval system for a specific domain. Therefore, you may have a limited number of queries. For a limited number of queries, you can have a small translation system which translates from one language to another language. And then second is probably one needs to summarize a larger document given in language A, but I may be a speaker of language B. If you can have a summarization of language, what is the document, summarization of a document or a content in language A, then you can summarize it in language A, then that summarization can be converted into language B, or the summarization itself of a document in content A could be straightway make in language B. That is what we call cross language summarization. So, we can have cross layer IR systems and cross language summarization systems. That is what the cross. Now, another aspect is testing grounds. Now, we need extrinsic evaluation of NLP systems. Now, the tools which have been generated by various researchers, how can you evaluate their performance and how good a tool is? If somebody has developed a parser for translating syntax of a language from one language to another language, how good this parser is? How do you or how do we evaluate this parser? Or there is a POS tagger, we have made a tagging system which tags a corpora which part of speech, then how do you evaluate that the system performs okay or good? And then you have a tokenizer. As I said, if you have a given sentence, the sentence has to be broken into tokens which you call words, so that the spaces, punctuation marks, other marks are removed from a sentence, so that it gives only you a set of words. That is what the tokens are. So, we need a program which is called a tokenizer, which splits a big sentence into individual words, sequence of individual words or a set of individual words. Now, if that is the case, then how do you evaluate these tools which are performing this task? Could be other kind of small machine translation system where we used for testing of the tools. Now, therefore, if you have this, now probably how to develop such kinds of systems, whether it is an IR system, cross language, whether it is domain specific, whether it is machine edit and testing grounds. Then the important point is how to make machine translation system. Now, we have various approaches for machine translation systems. That is, what are the approaches to be followed to translate a syntax or a sentence from one language to another language. Now, we have three kinds of approaches. right, and that is rule based approach and corpus based machine translation systems and semantic knowledge based representation. Thank you. See, what we have been discussing is the various approaches of machine translation. Now, there are 3-4 kinds of approaches for machine translation. Now, one of the approach is direct machine translation, that is word by word translation. You translate a word in a language to another, that means given a sentence you take one word and translate it to the other language word, take another word and translate it. So, therefore, so and so forth, all the words in a given sentence are translated from source language to the equivalent words in target language. This is one approach. And the second approach is a rule based machine translation system, where you have a set of rules to validate the sentences and to create a structure. That is what we talk, that you create a parse tree out of syntax analysis. Then that tree may be transferred, the structure in one language is transferred to the structure in another language. That is, a structure generated in source language is translated into a equivalent structure in target language. That means first from a sentence you have to create a structure, then you should have rules to translate that structure which is equivalent in the target language, and finally from the structure in the target language you generate a sentence. That is one approach. And this structure could be a simple tree structure and the structure could be a interlingua. So, that means where I said the rule based systems could be either transfer based or interlingua based. Here the meaning hereby is, in one you translate a structure from language A to language B, the structure in language B, that is what transfer based approach in rule based system. Second is, whatever structure you have created, that structure should be a common intermediate structure. That means sentences from language A is translated into a very common representation, and from that common representation you generate a sentence in the target language or a structure in the target language. That means I may not be only taking a structure from language A and translating it structure B. What I am doing, a structure in language A is being translated into a common representation. That means common representation means if I have a sentence that John hit the ball with the bat, as I said, the common representation which I call an interlingua may be, I convert it in terms of object and actions. I say ball, John and bat is objects and hitting is an action, and how they are related, that is the common structure I will have. It does not matter whether it is English, in Hindi, because in Hindi even I say ball, bat or John, it will remain, the number of objects remain the same, the action hitting will become marna, the action remains same, and their relationship will remain same. Therefore, they can be converted into a intermediate structure or a representation. That is what interlingua means. And the third approach is a corpus based machine translation. That means you have a huge database or collection of document or text in one language that must be used for translation purpose. Here we do not have a set of rules. That means we have only data available with us. Then we may have data available in two languages. Say if I am translating from English to Hindi, I may have documents in English and then in parallel I may have documents in Hindi. Then I try to use an example based approach. That means when I have to translate a sentence, then I look into the database, that the collection of text in language A, that means the sentence, given sentence is in English, then I will look in the corpora of English this kind of sentences, then I will see that is there any kind of example earlier where the same sentence has been translated into an equivalent sentence in Hindi, I look into the Hindi database whether it comes in parallel or not. If that occurs there, based on that I will take a decision that this is the probable answer of the sentence which I am going to translate. So, depending on the examples from the past, I am translating. I do not make rules. I know that in past time it has been translated like this, therefore, the current translation is like this. Second is, if I do not see the past examples, then I may use a statistical approach, that means if I try to translate, then I say that given target language sentences, these are the probable translations in language B, then I say out of these many translations, which is a most likely translation in language B. And that means if I give a sentence in John hit the ball with the bat, then equivalent English translation there may be multiple possible translations. Then I will choose out of these multiples which has the highest probability of occurrence. That means what I have done is, from the past I have given some sentence and try to see its translation, and then look that in a given document in Hindi how many times that translation has occurred, and if it occurs most of the time, then I have computed its probability, then I will say that is the translation. And then another approach is a semantic or knowledge based representation. We said there are various knowledge representation techniques. So, what I do or we take a source language sentence, translate it and then convert it to a semantic or a knowledge representation technique. And we talked about various knowledge representation techniques yesterday, where you say semantic networks, you may have a conceptual graph, you may have a conceptual dependency. That means a source language sentence ultimately is converted in a conceptual graph form, or in the form of conceptual dependency, or in the form of a semantic network. And from that knowledge representation, that means sentence which has been now represented in terms of a semantic network, is being translated into the target language. So, this is how these approaches are. Now, if you go in details of these approaches, now look at this. I have a source word, and then one I can simply, by gisting the words, finding the words, their meaning, and then gisting them together, then I will find a target word, that is target words, that is the transfer approach, that is the direct approach. So, that means source language words one by one are translated into target language words, and then they are combined together by word order. So, this is my transfer based approach, direct translation. Second is in transfer based approach, what I do is I have source word, then in the second row I will have source syntax of that, and the source syntax is converted or transferred into a target syntax. That means I said a parse tree is generated for a source language, then it will be converted into a parse tree of a target language. That is what the transfer based approach. And third is I take these source words and convert into syntax tree or syntax source syntax, then get its meaning at the top, then this meaning may be represented either through a knowledge representation or by other means, then I convert that into a target meaning. That is what all three approaches can be shown through this pyramid. Now, or that is what my interlingua is. So, convert into an interlingua and then transfer into a target meaning. That is what all approaches can be defined as. Now, I said that the direct MT or machine translation is word by word translation. What it requires? It requires a bilingual lexicon. That means I should have a lexicon which is bilingual, and that means it contains the word of source language and their corresponding or equivalent target language word. Like your dictionary, like Hindi to English dictionary, you have a English to Hindi or Hindi to English. If you have an English to Hindi dictionary, in the dictionary an English word is written, its equivalent in the Hindi word is written in the same dictionary, in the same line or same row. Now, therefore, when you are doing this, you look in the dictionary or lexicon, the source language word and then find the target language. So, that is what is one of the requirement is a bilingual lexicon, and there is no intermediate representation for it. We do not need parsing. If you look at the whole process of natural language processing, when you talked about various aspects and steps, it involves lot of aspects and steps. So, by direct machine translation, lot of steps or processes or aspects are being missed or not being processed, not being used here, right. No parsing, no intermediate representation, but it may perform morphological processing. That is what that means. The breaking of words into morphemes or vice versa, that adding morphemes into a word may be done as far as direct MT is concerned, but it needs to deal with the word ordering. The word ordering is important, because if you are not putting words in the order, then there is a problem. That is, Ram eats mango cannot be, it is Ram khata hai aam, it is not Ram aam khata hai, right. So, by word direct transfer, what you get is Ram khata hai aam, because Ram is Ram, eat is khata hai, mango is aam, then word order has to be kept in mind. Now, that is what we have to do. Now, and then if you go on rule based approach, what you find is it needs to parse a source text. That means you are doing parsing. The source text has to be parsed and a parse tree has to be generated, right. And then you also have to generate a parse tree for the target language. Then it needs an intermediate representation that has to be represented or shown in an intermediate representation. Then it needs rules like grammar rules to transmit or to check the syntax of a sentence in language A and then generate a parse tree. It needs a set of grammar rules and a parser which does this task. Therefore, the lexical, morphological and syntactic and semantic analysis are important as far as rule based approach is concerned. Now, there are few disadvantages of direct approach that you must understand. Since it is a word for word translation plus some local word ordering, therefore, it is a cheap, it needs and it is being done by using a very cheap, means very small and very limited bilingual dictionary or a lexicon, and it needs a rudimentary knowledge of target language. You do not need to know about the target language, but you have a lexicon, equivalent words are found and put in place of replacing the source language by the target language word. So, it does not need a good knowledge of a target language, only a rudimentary knowledge will work enough, will suffice. So, therefore, linguistically and computationally it is easy, it is naive, simple, because you do not need to do much, only look up in the dictionary and then replacing the words. That is why it is naive, but no analysis of internal structure of the input is done. We do not do the real deep analysis of the input. Therefore, the quality of translation will not be of good. Whereas in the rule based approach, what you are doing is the structure of a source text is transformed into a structure of the target text, and it may also need to have an intermediate representation and then transfer rules. How to transfer one structure into another structure. Therefore, there must be transfer rules. Based on certain rules, we will convert one structure into another structure. So, therefore, what it needs? It needs analysis, it needs transfer rules, and it needs synthesis. Let me explain it by this. Okay, this diagram here, what do you see is on the left hand side we are doing analysis, on the right hand side we are doing synthesis or generation. Now, that means for a rule based approach, what do? You convert this source word into a syntax form, then transfer, that means there are transfer rules in between, and then source and then target syntax is achieved. Now, right. So, now intermediate representation required and analysis, transfer, synthesis are also needed. Now, look at this tree. what this tree says is, if I give a English sentence, then John hit the ball, I have grammar rules because this is a rule based approach, and this rule based approach in using this grammar will convert this John hit the ball into a text tree, that is John is a noun and there is a verb phrase followed by, and the verb phrase has two constituents V and NP, then you get hit the ball. Now, if I am translating into Hindi, then it becomes John ने ball को मारा, say for example. Now, that means it cannot be John, then Mara, then ball. The structure of the tree will not remain same. That means what I am saying is, the NP and V in this phrase, I say S goes to N and VP. If you look at VP, VP is V goes to NP. Now in Hindi it should be V goes to NP followed by V. V and NP will replace each other's position. Now the tree for Hindi language will become a different tree. Now that means the structure, this structure, tree structure is being translated into equivalent Hindi structure. Then I need a transfer rule which says, no, the rule is the VP will not be NP, the VP is not V followed by NP, it will be NP followed by V. That is what the transfer rule will say, and therefore I will get a equivalent structure in Hindi language. Then in interlingua based approach, we need an intermediate representation which is independent of the language. That is why I said, if you store, these are the object and this is the action, and these are the relationship of the object with this relation. That means hit is an action and ball relates with as an object, and John relates with as a subject, and bat relates as an instrument. That is a general, it is independent of a language, it is a very generalized representation, whether it is Hindi or English, does not matter. So that is what my interlingua may be, or you may use a Karaka based theory that this is karta of this, and this is karma of this, and this is karna of this, and so forth, and could be very useful as a interlingual lingua approach. Initially when MT began in India, and people talk about Sanskrit language structure to be used as an interlingua approach because it is based on Karaka theory. So therefore it could be a good interlingua. Now it definitely will need the lexical analysis, it will need morphological analysis, it will need syntactic analysis, it will need semantic rules, and then analysis on the source side and synthesis on the target side. There are certain advantages of transfer system. When a transfer based approach is used, then what do? There is a no language independent representation. Source IR specific to particular language is as target language IR. So therefore we have our information retrievals in source language and there is a target language. You do not need an interlingua approach. Take this structure, straight away convert into that structure. So the complexity of analysis and generation is reduced. I don't only need to create a structure, do morphology and do syntax, rest you don't need to. Semantics and word knowledge is not important here. And then you have a set of rules, this will convert again in a structure and then language. So the number of aspects which we have been dealing with are reduced, therefore the complexity is reduced, complexity of running the program in terms of runtime or complexity of developing the system, both are reduced. And so is with the generation and synthesis. And the disadvantage is not so easy to extend to other language. What does it mean? If I make a system for translation from Hindi to English, what do? I know the structures of English, then I have certain set of rules how to transfer, then transfer in English, in Hindi. Now that means if you have n languages, then you need n cross n minus 1 modules. That means you should have n into n minus 1 set of rules to translate from n to n minus, to transfer from one language to another language, so that you have a transfer based translation system for all n languages. So that means it is complexity is n square. How many modules you need is n square, huge number of. That is where the problem are, and this is no guarantee to built in back translation. That means if you have a translator from language A to language B, it does not mean you have a translated from language B to language A, because I generate a structure in language A, then I have a transfer rule which says how to transfer this structure from language A to language B. But I may not have a set of rules which says how to transfer a structure from language B to language A. So, having a system, transfer system for translating from language A to language B does not necessarily mean it will translate from language B to language A. So, there is no back translation built into it. So, you have to, if you have to build, you have to build another set of transfer rules which will transfer a structure from language B to language A. This is the disadvantage. Whereas, if you have an interlingual system, if you have an interlingua, then only one module will work, because you convert a structure into intermediate representation which is independent of language. So, once from language A you have converted a sentence into an interlingua which is independent of language, from there you can translate into any other language. So, you do not need between every language pair a system, you need a language, and from a language you need to how to generate an interlingua, and then you need how from interlingua to go to a language. That is specific things you need. So, the advantage and disadvantage, the intermediate representation fully specified in case of your interlingual system. Therefore, it looks back, you do not need to look that you need another system which will say from B to A. So, if you have an interlingual system, if you can translate from A to B, you can also translate from B to A. So, the back translation is not a difficulty. Since you have make a system, interlingua based system, that means from a language structure you are able to create an interlingua. Now, once you have done, you bring any language and make rules how to make from interlingua to the language B or language C or language D. So, that means if you make it between A and B, then you can extend easily it to language C, language D, language E, anything. However, the disadvantage is, however define an interlingua for a closely related languages. That means, if you have all European languages which may be closely related, then you can have an interlingua for them, or you say all North Indian languages for which my interlingua is a Karak based Sanskrit theory, how closely they are, still there is a problem that it will have the language specific problem. So, we cannot have a truly universal interlingua. That means, we cannot have one interlingua which will work for all languages truly. There will be some specific, like I said, some interlingua may be good for Indian languages, some may be for European languages, so on and so forth, right. And how to define an interlingua itself is a question. If I say Karaka based theory probably may not suit to certain languages in the world, best suited for North Indian languages, even and some South Indian languages as well, but may not be probably suited that way for European languages, so on and so forth. Now, another approach is a corpora based approach, where we require a large corpora or a storage or a resource where the sentences are aligned in parallel for language pairs. If I have language pair, language A and language B, I should store the sentences from language A and the equivalent sentences from language B. That is why I said in parallel there is a pair, they are aligned. That means, when you check in the corpora for a sentence of language A, you will find in parallel with it there is a sentence in B is also stored. Like in a dictionary you have an English word, then equivalent Hindi word. Similarly, in corpora you can have a Hindi sentence, then you can have an equivalent English sentence. So, if you are given a Hindi sentence, you get a English sentence, but these sentences may not be exact translation. That is where the problems are. If you have translation, exactly translated sentences, you can pick them up and give the translation. Then what is basically a translation system is doing? Then it is a kind of a search mechanism. Then you are searching a sentence in the corpora for language A. Once you located it, then in parallel to it you get the equivalent sentence. That is not the case here. Therefore, yes, you need it as a resource, but it requires a lot of effort to create corpora itself. Now, in example based approach, what we need from the corpora, we try to see the past examples and see that what kind of translation it has done, and the current system can see that looking at the past examples, it can see that it is a similar translation, therefore, it is the probable translation of the given sentence. And even after translation, it may need deletion of certain words, addition of certain words, or replacement of certain chunks which might not have been placed properly. And another is a statistical approach. It has been taken mainly from the word or phrase based translation. That means, in my corpora, I can have phrases, parallel phrases, a phrases of Hindi along with the parallel phrases of English must be kept, or sentences may be kept. So, whatever you want to keep in the corpora, that can be kept, and then translation can be done. But only it may give multiple translations, and therefore, you must use statistics to get the what has the probability of the most likely answer of a sentence. So, it is a complex model. I will skip this. Now, the last point is that we can have a semantic and knowledge based systems. So, a rule based approach even has some kind of semantics involved, but their central component is a syntax analysis. We do not go to semantics and knowledge representation. But this approach requires large knowledge base that includes ontology and lexical knowledge. That means, in case of knowledge based approach, you should have ontology systems, like WordNet is one kind of ontology, that is where your concept and their relations are stored. So, ontology may be a good tool to help for translation, and it also leads a huge lexical knowledge base. Now, the practical considerations, if you look after hearing to all these approaches, is the availability of the resources. Now, do you really have number of parsers and generators are required for generating input outputs for various languages, and have you have these many lexicons available? If I say you need a translation system from Hindi to Telugu, do you have lexicons available for Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, and so forth? And even if you take a word based or direct transfer approach, do you have lexicons available between various Indian languages or not? Even if you take domain specific corpora, the availability of the resources for Indian languages in India still is a big road to go ahead to create and to generate those kind of resources, and the availability of time for creation of such resources is equally important, because you cannot build a resource in a day or two. It takes a lot of time and huge amount of money. So, there are few translation systems for Indian languages are available. One is Angla Bharti, developed by IIT Kanpur. We have a Shakti, that is also developed by IIT Kanpur. We have Mantra by CDEC, and we have Matra, EIL, and then Anusaraka by IITK as well. There are other translation systems which are possible, and they are not fully functional that you give certain sentence, they can give you a full translation. Still they give a limited approach, and then still lot more to go, and these systems will definitely come one day. Thank you. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for your productive session. And dear friends, if you have any queries, then you can mail us at info.cc@nic.in. We would love to solve your queries the next time Dr. D.K. Lobial visits our studio. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.